Okay, the Scott, you were talking to me, and you wanted to bring up somewhat about the barefooted that you run into.
Well, a lot of times what we get is a horse that's lame, and you kind of get him after the fact, and so you're trying to patch up something that's already happened, and it's really frustrating. You can, with a temporary lameness, a lot of times just let his foot grow out and rebalance him. That'll solve the problem. But like I say, a lot of times you get these horses when they're older horses and the damage has been done. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Do you think, Scott, that who do you think is creating the biggest problems in our industry about this barefooted stuff? And Ginger was talking earlier about the Mustang roll, people wanting the natural and this and that. They don't really understand they're being sold a bill of beans by some of these people out there that this is the only research center in the world right here.
Yeah.
And, if they need to know one thing about something, it would be easy to call to find out.
Yeah.
But we're getting a lot of complaints from farriers about these Mustang rolls. I want my horse to trim naturally and everything. They need to understand what natural is. And the Grammar School of Shoeing, the tape comes from the research center, and all the proceeds goes to the research center to research farrier science. But what would be some of the tips you could give a horse owner?
Well, I don't really have anything against the barefooters. What I'd like to see is, understandably, they want a piece of the pie too, but, I'd like to see some of these programs incorporating some anatomy and some background studies and that sort of thing. A lot of times we'll get a horse that has just been trimmed so short, you just can't do anything for him.
Is that what they call the Mustang roll?
Well,
where have they coming up with all this stuff?
I try to help the horse owners with this because the terminology changes over the years. It's a bit like ladies' fashions. Every season we got a new something or another. But since I've been around, we've had the wild horse trim, the 4-point trim, natural balance, Mustang roll.
Yeah.
And it kind of all really goes back to the same thing. There's slight variations, but it all ultimately comes back to sound trimming and sound shoeing.
Yeah, Scott, we've got letters from horse owners saying Clinton Anderson says I trim my horses and that's all you need. We have our own farrier that trims our horse and so on and so forth. I'd like to show folks a picture, and he's a lot older. I did a clinic out in Colorado with John Lyons. We've got some photos there. And John said, Ralph, won't you come out here and look at my horses and stuff? And I said, what I'd recommend, John, is you to get you a good farrier. I said, who's doing all that? He said, I am. I don't never ride them, Ralph. I just show them a little bit and so on and so forth. Well, that's fine. But you still, John, you need a certified farrier, because he was wondering why his horse was sore in the back.
Yeah.
They get sore up in the spine, and you can see when we look at horses, and I wanted to show this on the screen, that first thing a lot of us farriers do, we get up around the spine, especially when you got one heel lower or higher than the other, and then one leg's longer, it makes him sore up around his withers, and when you put a little pressure, I've seen horses fall.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen immediately. It happens over time, and you're not exactly sure where it came from. You notice it. The people who ride a lot will just notice something just isn't right. It's different from what it was before. That horse is sore in the small of his back.
What I found when I was out shoeing, and I don't know, you'll have to tell me, because I know it's a little different. There's a lot of different more products out there today. But here you can see that we at the research center, we're working on some babies. The horses growing, most of your quarter horses up to 5 years, they're constantly growing. And that's where you need to put your money in the feet.
Yeah.
Because if you get that foot out, then you're in problems. And here again, we need to bring up what is natural. A horse gets unnatural, becomes unnatural every step he takes. So therefore, he's wearing out one heel more than the other, one toe more than the other, and flaring one. And all that has to be removed.
Yeah.
And it's just like you wear a pair of shoes. Your conformation dictates how your foot strikes the ground. Well, there was a world champion horseshoer that wrote an article. He said, I've been studying the horses out in the wild, and I noticed they all got rocker toes. Here's this Mustang rope. I think I'll start rocking all the toes. And so anyway, I wrote a rebuttal to that, but I didn't mail it in. Ginger wouldn't let me. But my article went this way. I was so impressed with that article that I looked down at my own shoes and I see I'm out in the wild. So I noticed my heel. I'm going to show a pair of my shoes here.
Okay.
How the heel is wore off there. You can see my shoe, the heel. So I was so impressed with the article, I ran down to Walmart, bought me a new pair of shoes, and before I put them on, gang, I went to a shoe shop, had them grind my heel off, flare my shoe out to the outside out there, and grind my inside toe down where I could be like them horses out in the wild. That's about how much sense that article made. But that's what's going on today, Scott. Untrained people and so on. And that's the whole purpose of having a research center. I have just, in the last 15 years here, and you was here in the beginning of the research, I have just learned more, and it behooves me that every farrier in the United States don't continue in education, because I learn something every day here.
You ought to take advantage of it, especially if you're within driving distance of the research center. I mean, it's just a tool there for your use, and it can only make you a better farrier.
You know, if I was a horse owner out there today, what I'd do, I'd want to see my farrier continue his education. If he didn't, I'd be looking for another shoer.
You know, we get some horse owners up here quite a bit.
And we absolutely, and a lot of them are coming, and a lot of you folks out there, you've been ordering the grammar school of shoeing and trimming, and we appreciate it, because that was 6 years in the making,
Yeah.
and we're constantly adding to it. All the time we update it, because recently we did that trim stuff with the thermography that we're going to add on to the old one. So we're constantly updating it for the research that we do here. Remember, gang, this is something I think every horse owner should own. Every person out there that participates, every farrier should have it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of them jumped into college before they got to grammar school. And I found that out doing clinics around the country. A lot of the farriers, you asked them, well, do you do corrective work every time you shoe the horse? I certainly do. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? And boy, right off the bat, I'm balancing the horse. Well, what do you mean by that? And then they get lost real easy. So there's many ways, guys and gals out there that owns horses. When you watch this grammar school of trimming and shoeing, the whole idea is to educate you. It's not to make you a farrier or a person that goes out and trim. It is where you can protect your horse. Because I think one of the big problems, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, I think when you got too much government, we think everybody should look after us. Well, I wasn't brought up that way. I was brought up you got to look after yourself.
Yeah.
You need to read it. If you're going to own a horse, most of the horses found their own grass.
Yeah.
And if horse owners were more educated about that, they'd find they wouldn't have a foundered horse. I've had horses for 40-something years, never had a foundered horse. I've had one horse colic, and I knew that was my fault. I ain't even going to get into that game, because you'd be riding in and criticizing me there a little bit. But anyway, hang with us. We're going to be right back. Oh, but it's tickled to be with you. Go by the refrigerator and pick you up a cold one.